All right, guys, and welcome back to Real Talk Sports with Rico. Today, I will be your host. Today's show, we are actually talking about game three, game four, and then also to a preview of game five of the NBA Finals here, which have been pretty exciting, even though it is a 3-1 lead for the Denver Nuggets. I think the games have been relatively close for the most part, except for game three. We'll be talking about that, talking about the keys to success for both teams. Before we actually jump into the content, let me first and foremost thank Anchor for being our platform. You can catch us on Anchor and Spotify podcast there, and we'll have the links below in the show notes. Want to go ahead and thank the sponsors out there who put sponsorship on the show and the fans out there who have actually chimed in on a week-to-week basis here to help us drive content to the show. If you're looking at the show here on YouTube, definitely check us out at Real Talk Sports with Rico. Definitely make sure you press that like and subscribe button here. And you can generally catch us every Sunday here. There are some hiccups sometimes where we do actually do the show a little bit later in the week. But for the most part, you can catch us on Sunday is when this show actually streams. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and let's jump right into the content. And here we go. So bringing it up here, we are talking first with game three. I had left you guys off with, hey, what are we going to do going into game three? What was going to be the key here? Pretty sure I felt like Denver was going to have the advantage here, and Denver did take care of business. And by the way, guys, why I'm actually talking here in this first segment, I'm going to throw up some NBA 2K23 gameplay for you guys as well, while we actually go ahead and recap this game three for you. So, it was interesting to say the least, man. I thought that Miami was certainly going to come out and play hard. I thought that, Miami definitely had a chance to possibly go ahead and win that game after seizing momentum in game two and winning in Denver, seeing as how Denver had not lost in the playoff series, but it just wasn't meant to be. And I think it comes down to the fact that we'll talk a little bit more extensively about it, but Nokia Jokic, and then also too Jamal Murray were just absolutely unstoppable. You're looking at two guys here that basically made history in game three, and it has never been done before with two players who had a 30-point triple-double. You had Jokic, who had 32 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists. You had Jamal Murray, who had 34 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. He actually got his 10th rebound with 9 seconds to go in game three. And I just think that was tough for the Miami Heat, first and foremost, to go ahead and overcome, because you had the two best players on Denver play extremely well. And generally, when they play well, the rest of the team plays well. And on top of that, you knew it was a size advantage that Denver had against Miami, a much scrappier team. And that definitely came to fruition as well in game three. The rebound disparity here was Denver actually out-rebounded the Miami Heat 58-33. That's huge as far as rebounds. And you know how I feel about the rebounding game. I feel like when it comes down to rebounding, if you out-rebound a club, essentially what you're doing here is you're giving yourself extra possessions on the offensive end, which means that your percentage to score the basketball goes up. Then on the defensive end, when you are out rebounding that club, you are taking away their second chance opportunities, thus taking away extra scoring possessions. That usually leads to a very, very good outcome for you if you out rebound the club. And that's exactly what Denver did. They played to its size. They out rebounded Miami, and Miami really was never a threat in game three for the most part, even though they did make a little bit of a run. And generally, they had been winning the fourth quarter. And I believe they did win the fourth quarter here in game three, but that still didn't matter. It was still a 21-point game, even though Miami did start to chip away late. Um, as far as the unsung heroes for Denver in this particular game, it was Christian Braun, which is the outstanding rookie who is probably underrated in his class coming out of Kansas. I love how this young man competes. I think that if you're a card collector or if you're into the sports memorabilia market, this is definitely a guy that you're going to start to want to take a look at. And I think that you're seeing his championship pedigree show up. This is a guy that doesn't play like a rookie. He plays a lot bigger than what he is. And I think he's a perfect fit for Denver. He goes right along with Bruce Brown. It's like a guy that pretty much can be a utility guy that is undersized, that can really play all different roles and is not afraid to attack the basket or shoot the ball at any given moment. He had 15 points, which is huge coming off the bench, and really helped Denver as far as the bench scoring was concerned, and really helped Denver seize control here. As far as Miami is concerned on their end, Jimmy Butler had a pretty good game with 28 points here. Bam Adebayo had a double-double with 22 and 17. I was very impressed with the way he's competed, not only in game three, but the way he's competed, I believe, throughout this series has been spectacular for him, because when Miami played the Lakers in the bubble championship, I thought that Bam struggled in that finals, and that generally can happen to players when they first get there, even though it was a bubble situation. And then also too, he was a little banged up going into that. I think he had like a shoulder injury or something like that. So he wasn't even 100%. But I love the fact that Bam has competed. He has not shied away from the Joker, even though he had 32, 21, and 10. I think that Bam really gave him everything that he could possibly give him, and give the Heat, as far as a chance to win there. So certainly he's played very well. And Caleb Martin, who has been the story, I think, of the NBA playoffs, and certainly I think is on his way to a big contract this year, had 10 points as well. But just not enough for Miami to overcome in game three. And like I said before, I liked Denver in game three. I thought that Miami, for sure, it wouldn't have shocked me if they would have won, just because of how scrappy they have been. But I knew it was going to be a tall order. And the one thing that I can say about Denver is they've been focused throughout the year. Okay. So there was no hangover from game two in that loss. There's been a huge amount of focus. And when I say a huge amount of focus, when you look at the top teams in the West this year, Golden State, who had won the title a year before, they had a little bit of a cloud hanging over them because of what happened with Draymond Green and Jordan Poole in the offseason, or the preseason workout leading into the season, with the altercation that they had there in training camp. Okay. You look at Memphis, who is second in the West. Memphis had a situation in which, obviously with Ja Morant, you had the injuries to their bigs, in the Ja Morant situation with the weapons and things like that. They had a huge cloud hanging over their head. And it's just one of those things where also too, they were looking at going ahead and shaking up the roster too as well, because you see all the mess that's out there from Dylan Brooks, and it looks like he's not going to be coming back. So Denver was the most focused team. And I think when you're focused like Denver, you're able to bounce back on nights like this. When you do take a loss and, it's a tough loss, it was a close loss, because in game two, they had a chance to send that into overtime. And really, I had just spoken with somebody just the other day. I'm not sure how Denver lost game two. They were actually up by a bunch, but because Miami competes so hard and they have essentially won every fourth quarter of the game except for game four, that is how Miami was able to seize the moment and win that. So kudos to them, but kudos to Denver for showing the mental toughness of what a championship team has to show in order to get it done in game three. leading into game 4. And so with game 4, guys, game 4 it's funny because game 3 ended 109-94. Game 4 ends 108-95. Um, which will lead me into my preview for game 5 and why I think this. But to go through it, first of all, with Murray and Jokic, another outstanding game with those two. And, not only did they have a good game, but looking at Aaron Gordon, okay, and this is why Denver is so tough because they have so many different pieces. And a lot of these guys have been together for a long time. That core of, Michael Porter Jr., you got Nikola Jokic, you got Jamal Murray. I know Caldwell Pope has just come over, Jeff Green. These are a lot of guys that have just come over. For the most part, the core has been together. And they've had Aaron Gordon, I think, for about a season or two. So he's really starting to become a piece or a core point to Denver. And he had a stellar game. In game 1, he had a really good one. In game 4, he had a very good one. He had 27 points. He seems to have been able to figure out a little bit more of that front line with Miami, either when they switch and bring in Kevin Love, he's been able to figure that out, or when they've tried to hide in that zone, or even try to put Gabe Vincent or a Duncan Robinson or a Caleb Martin on him. He's been able to exploit that. And not only exploit that, the one thing that I like about Aaron Gordon in game 4, which goes to, Jokic's outstanding passing ability, Aaron Gordon has been terrific at finding cutting lanes and spots. If you look at the tape in game 4, there were several plays where Aaron Gordon is cutting and literally catching it as he's going up and laying it into the basket on some terrific passes from the Joker. And so he's done a great job in not just being stationary and being a primary post-up player. He hasn't just stood out at the three-point line. He hasn't just attacked from the mid-range, but he's attacking in multiple ways, and he's also getting to the free throw line. And it reminds me a lot of the player that he was when he came out of the University of Arizona. He actually played a lot like a big guard that just ran down the floor the whole time that year. I remember him and Stevie Johnson actually played together in Arizona. And that was the one thing about Aaron Gordon is he ran the floor hard. He was able to take the ball up the court, and he handled a lot like a point guard or guard. And one thing that he's done has been a guy that has actually kind of turned into a little bit more of a slasher slash banger in this game. So he can get a little, dirty or in the mud and post a bit, but he's also a bit of a slasher where he scores on different levels and kind of keeps you off balance. And you forget about him that he actually had some solid years in Orlando where he was the main guy before he was traded away. And so it was good to see that and see him come through. I think he was a key for game 4. Another key for game 4, we talked about what Christian Braun did in game 3, but how about Bruce Brown coming over from the Brooklyn Nets? I thought that he was maybe the MVP of the Brooklyn Nets over the last couple seasons, with Kevin Durant being out for multiple games, Kyrie Irving and his situation. A lot of people really didn't pay attention to what Bruce Brown was able to do. I mean, he's a 6'6" guard, but he plays like a 7-footer. And the one thing I love about Bruce Brown is he scores in many different ways. He can be a point guard. He can be a point forward. He'll rebound. He's terrific at getting to the paint and finishing at different angles and tough shots. And he's a very willing defender as well. And so he had a terrific game. He had 21 points off the bench, helping essentially Denver win the bench battle there. And then you look at the two tandem with Murray and Jokic. Jokic had 27 and Murray with 15 and 12. when that duo is clicking like that, Denver is hard to beat. And once again, they showed that. And on the other side of the ball, you look at Jimmy Butler. Butler had 25, which has been pretty consistent with what he has done during this series. Bam, still consistent with his double-double. He had 20 and 11. Talked about how he had 22 and 17 in game 3. So these two players have been very consistent. And then you have Lowry with the 13. The one thing that has been inconsistent, I think, for Miami in this particular series, and especially in these games, is they have not had the role playing or the role players kind of come up and be consistent and tough like they have been the past couple series. And what do I mean by that? They have gotten some valuable contributions from guys like Gabe Vincent, Gabe Martin, Duncan Robinson at times, and they have come in abundance. I think that Denver has done a great job in limiting the role players here. And now you're starting to see that that is the problem with Miami, and why I think that Miami will probably be hunting for another superstar in this offseason, okay? Because your role players, they're role players for a reason, okay? Those are not, the main stars. If you take them to another team, they're probably going to be good, but your stars are guys that are clutch basket makers. These are people that you run sets for. These are people that pretty much, when you get to a superstar or star level, these players, it's just they're at another level to where they're just unstoppable, right? Like you look at Jimmy Butler, it was just a simple adjustment from game 1 to attacking the rim and just going and being a bit more aggressive. And you see he was essentially unstoppable. I don't know if your role players are necessarily able to kind of click that switch. They play off of the star players for the most part. And I think that that's where the real value is when you're role playing. And I think that, the role players have been very limited. They've been sparse with the 3-point opportunities. This is a team that came in, they were number 1 in 3-point shooting. They've struggled at that. And when you look at the game 4 performances, for a team that had been so hot from the 3-point line, Miami only shot 8 of 25, going for 32%. And Denver, on the other hand, was 14 of 28 for 50%. Almost they knocked down 50% of their shots from the 3-point land. And when you look at the percentage, the 3-point percentage and the dip, a lot of those shots that have been going in from the role players. The role players have been able to eat off Jimmy Butler and Bam. When Jimmy Butler has been unstoppable and clutch like he has been the last couple rounds, that's where teams are starting to load up. They're sending doubles, maybe they're sending triples. And if they are playing a zone, they're leaving shooters open. And that's where Caleb Barton, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, even Kevin Love, Kyle Lowry, those guys were able to eat lunch. But because Denver has been able to essentially put one guy on Jimmy Butler, and they also have a rim protector in the Joker back there, now it's tougher for Jimmy to get his baskets, even though he's eating lunch, but they're taking away a lot of the kickouts to these role players. And the role players that Miami has, they're not really role players that create off the dribble. They're more so predicated off of the ball movement that comes out of either a post entry from Bam or Jimmy, right? Or they're able to get a little bit of player movement off that scramble drill, which is what Miami does a lot of, right? Because that's how they play. They're a tough team that scrambles a lot. And that has been taken away from Denver because Denver's size, their length, and their individual defense. A lot of people slept on Caldwell Pope, who is actually a very good defender as well. All right. You have Michael Porter Jr., who has actually been pretty stellar with Jimmy Butler, even though he has scored in the 20s. There's a lot of times in the NBA that people don't understand. Guys can go for 20 or 30, but it can still be a good defensive night when you look at the box score and you look at how hard that 20 or 30 was, and it's enough to slow that guy down. And that's what they have been able to do. At times, they've been able to put Jamal Murray on him, and he's kind of slowed him down a little bit. Jeff Green, the experienced veteran, he's a bit of more size that they've been able to throw out there. So they've made it very, very difficult on Miami. Another place where Miami has lacked has been the turnover battle. When you look at game 4, okay, Miami had 15 total turnovers. All right, these are possessions that you're giving away. That turned into 8 points off the turnovers for Denver. And you look at, even though Miami was able to score more points off their turnovers, but they still lost the turnover battle 18-15. So a lot of that comes down to, again, great individual defense, and also too with the length of Denver, they've been able to play the passing lanes a little bit more as well. And the foul discrepancies were about the same. And in game 4, slight paint production here with the Miami Heat only losing that 46-48 here. So they did a pretty good job of staying solid. And that comes down to Bam still being aggressive. So kudos to him. And so with that being said, guys, that leads into my game 5 prediction. And I like Denver. Okay. I really like Denver to take care of business here. I know this is going to be a tough game. Closeout games usually are. If Denver doesn't close the deal, I definitely think that they close the deal in 6. I had this series in, a 5 to 6 game series. I knew Miami was tough. And in fact, I think I had this picked. I think it was a 6 game series because I had it picked 4-2 actually. So, and it wouldn't shock me if Denver is able to take care of this thing 4-1. Because to be honest with you, I don't think that they should have lost game 2. I think that they gave game 2 away, and they still had a chance to win game 2. But they're not going to get game 5 in Denver. Okay, Miami is going back into altitude. That's going to be a tough one. I think they're going to have a ton of energy with the home crowd out there. And right now, you're looking at the fact of why I think Denver has such an advantage. Look, they have Bruce Brown. They have Thomas Bryant, who, if you're looking at the screen on YouTube here, they haven't even used him. Reggie Jackson, they use sparingly, right? They still have Christian Braun coming off the bench, and that's just the bench. They still have DeAndre Jordan, who they haven't used as well. And then you look at the starting 5, man. I mean, Jamal Murray. You have the Joker, Michael Porter Jr., Claudwell Pope, Aaron Gordon. Right? Like their second 5, it might be able to compete with Miami. Like seriously, in all seriousness. And I think that that's been the problem here is just the depth that Denver has, and they have had absolutely no answer for the Jokic. Jokic has been able to take Bam outside and score. He's been able to get his passes off at will. He's been able to run the offense fluidly with the point forward. The zone defense has not really worked and slowed down Denver as much as well. Okay, so they've been able to kind of slice that up with great shooting. And here's another thing. Because Denver is winning the turnover battle, what's happening now is that when you win the turnovers, that means that Miami's not even being able to get back and set up their defense. You have to score, and then you're able to get back and set up your defense. Because Miami's been at a deficit and been down for most of these games, and then on top of that, they're turning it over, they're not even getting a good chance to set the defense that they necessarily want. So it's almost like Miami is always on its heels when it comes to Denver. And I just like Denver a lot here in game 5. I think that they're going to take care of business. And the scores, I think, are showing that Miami's pretty much maxed out at about 94 to 95 points. I just don't think that they have enough in this series with the way the role players are playing. The times that they've been over 100, they've shot the 3-ball well. And I think that I just told you that they have taken away the role players. They've taken away those angles. They've been able to basically handle Jimmy Butler and make him go one-on-one. They haven't had the double or send a triple or anything like that. And so it's going to be tough for Miami to overcome this. I think that essentially Denver is going to win game 5 and actually go ahead and break the drought of 32, 43 years or whatever it's been and get Denver its first championship. I think that Denver is going to hoist the banner, or the banner, the championship banner here in Denver come Monday night. So, and with that being said, guys, let's shift over here to some of these stats here and some of the reasons why I think that we need to really seriously think about Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic should probably be considered as one of the best duos in NBA history. Now, to be a duo, you don't necessarily have to win championships. Okay, let's get that clear. Like Kobe and Shaq, okay, they won championships. Kareem and Magic, they won championships. Michael, Scotty, they won championships. If you want to call it Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they won championships. However, Karl Malone, John Stockton never won a championship, but they are considered as one of the best duos in NBA history. And look, it's going to look great if Jokic and Murray can close out the deal, which I think they will, and get a championship. That's going to look great on the resume. I'm not sure how many championships that they have, but regardless, if they never win again after this year, they still must be considered one of the best duos in NBA history. I have never seen they're almost like the hip hop version of Karl Malone and John Stockton. I'm serious. It's just that they're in a role reversal because the Jokic or the Joker is essentially the high assist man, but Murray follows suit and they both score at a higher clip than them, right? And they both have been deep into the finals or they both been deep into the playoffs and the finals there. So I think that for some time to come, this is going to be looked at as one of the best duos in NBA history. And looking at how good Jamal Murray is the first player in the NBA with 10 assists in his first 4 games. Like, that speaks volumes, guys. Like, I mean, look, in his first NBA finals appearance, you look at all the great point guards that have ever played in the NBA that have gotten to the finals, and he's the first. Like, that's saying something about Jamal Murray. And, I've always said that Jamal Murray was one of the most clutch players in the league because I've never seen a guy make shots the way he does in such duress. But the fact that he's able to pass it so well and find guys too in the chaos, it's quite interesting to see this guy work on a day-to-day basis. And also too, you're looking at if you're looking at the screen here on YouTube, we got a stat here provided by StatMuse, so make sure you go check them out. But Jamal Murray is, like I said, the first player in NBA history with the 10 plus assists. Just throwing it up there on the screens here to let you guys know from a historic standpoint, man, this is pretty incredible, man. On top of that, look at this, guys. As far as the Joker and how good he has been, highest career playoffs per in the last 70 years with a minimum of 50 games. Like, how good is that? I mean, look right here on this list, man. You have the Joker at 29.1 points per game. You have Michael Jordan, who I have watched him in his era play, 28.6. And then you have, look at this, 27.9 from LeBron James and then 26.6 from Anthony Davis. The fact that he leads even Michael Jordan here with that's incredible, man. And LeBron James, who a lot of people will always consider him as one of the greatest of all time. This is why I'm saying that Murray and the Joker must be looked seriously at as one of the best tandems in NBA history. And Finally, guys, I'm going to throw up one more stat as to why Miami will need to go out and find another star this offseason, and also to actually get another ring post LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. You're looking at it. I'm throwing up another stat here, and most clutch points in the playoffs this year and their clutch percentages here. Jimmy Butler leads this with 48%, but look who's third there, the Joker, at 36% in the clutch. And that's not even counting the fact that, he's got Jamal Murray out there. We don't see the top 10 list, which I'm sure he's out there. But I guarantee you, there is no other Miami Heat on the list that is in the clutch, a highest performers list. And so this is why Miami has to go out and get a star, because you need another guy that can go out there and create his own shots, that's going to be able to take the ball and get buckets when you need to, when your role players aren't playing so well. And they're going to need somebody outside of Bam Adebayo. Kyle Lowry might be more of a bench player right now in his career. So, they need to seriously go out there and think about finding another player to go along with Jimmy Butler. I'm not sure, who's going to be out there. There's always a plethora of changes coming, but I think at some point Miami is going to have to go ahead and address this, and it can't solely be just having, the undrafted players out there as well. And so, with that being said, guys, that is today's podcast. Just going ahead and recapping here games 3 and 4. We talked a bit about who is expected to win game 5. I like Denver in that one. And just make sure, guys, if you're watching, you like subscribe button to follow the show there. Make sure that you definitely like us on Spotify, as we have the podcast up there. I want to go ahead and thank Anchor for being our platform there for the Spotify podcast. I want to thank the fans out there who have chimed in on a week-to-week basis, and the sponsors out there as well. All that will be on the show notes. Definitely want to go ahead and thank Stat Moose here, as these are some of the stats where we had got this here to put up on the show today. So with that being said, this is Rico with Real Talk Sports, guys. I will see you guys on another episode. For now, peace.